everybody, and welcome to the Meeting Protocol Monthly podcast, where we chat with some of the coolest people in the business and bring you useful and relevant information about what's happening in the world of meeting and event planning. I am Dora Figueredo, the head of events and education at Meeting Protocol, coming to you from New Jersey. I love talking to people who came into events through a non-traditional route. Though I might be biased because my entry was also quite non-traditional. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll know I started my career as a high school teacher. So I love talking to other educators, foreshadowing, and also just people who found their way into this in a different way. So today's guest not only has a varied career background in terms of education, holding both a law degree and a hospitality degree, as well as various other certifications, including being a certified hospitality educator and a CMP. I mean, this guy's list is super impressive. But also, he has a decade's worth of impressive experience across film and music festivals and higher education events. I would love to welcome Withrow Newel, instructor of hospitality and tourism at the University of Montevallo, to our podcast today. He began his career in the hospitality sector with the Walt Disney World College program and has held a variety of hospitality positions, including roles at the Sidewalk Film Festival, Tribeca Film Festival, Oxford Film Festival, and Samford University. He currently serves on the executive board of the Sidewalk Film Festival and the Hoover Ahead Board. I am super impressed by your credentials, so thank you so much, Withrow, for being with us today. Tell us where you're joining from and what did get you into events.
So I'm coming to you from Hoover, Alabama. That's a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. If you guys know any history of the area, we are over the mountain over here. How I came to events, really, it was the Walt Disney World College program. So that was my first hospitality job. Before then, I had just worked kind of like an arrangement of restaurant work, survey work, your typical stuff like you do in high school and like early on in your college career. But once I got to Walt Disney World and I finished that program, I was really interested in hospitality. The only problem was where I ended up landing after Orlando was in a small community, and the community college actually they had a hospitality degree, but it was culinary based. And so I ended up not pursuing my education further in hospitality at that time, just because I was just like, oh, I didn't want to do it because it's culinary. As a 41-year-old man, I'm like, you know what? Just having that probably would have helped, but life's about choices, and we are the amalgamy of our decisions. So, yeah, from there, getting into like festivals, I hate to admit it, y'all. Like at that point in my life, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and I was like lonely. And I really like movies. So before we started recording, I was talking to Dora about having an A-list membership at AMC. I don't get paid by them, but you should go ahead and get it if you like movies and you're close. So at that point in my life, was working for a family business and just going to movies a lot. And then one day I was watching Siskel and Ebert, thought about it, and I was like, oh, I should go to film festivals, right? And I just Google search, or maybe back then, what was it? Ask Jeeves, was that still around back then?
Yes, that's real old school.
Yeah, I'm dating myself right here. But I found a few film festivals. I ended up going to Sidewalk Film Festival first because by happenstance, when I had that like revelation, it was 2 weeks away. And so my first official festival gig was volunteering at Sidewalk Film Festival, asking a bunch of questions, just kind of getting interested in the whole makeup of it. Just because while I knew I wanted to be like in hospitality, um, I don't think I had the language in my brain. You know how sometimes like you think back, I always wanted to do this. I just didn't know how to say I wanted to do something. Like sometimes
Mhm.
people are like, I want to help people when they're 18, and then you run into them 10 years later and they're MDs. And that's how they help people, but they couldn't really articulate it. But they just kind of knew where they were headed to. Ended up moving to Birmingham after a few different volunteer gigs. So just to list them, so Crossroad Film Festival in Jackson, Mississippi, Oxford Film Festival, the first couple of times I volunteered there, Fright Night Film Festival in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a bit of a deep cut, but a good festival as well. But once I found my way to Birmingham, worked a few jobs here and there, still volunteering with Sidewalk. And then eventually, through my volunteer work at Sidewalk, I got a gig with Ticket Biscuit, RIP. So Ticket Biscuit was a local ticketing software company. E-tickets bought them out maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So the most of the old team still operates the same software. It just has like an e-ticket wrapper on it versus a Ticket Biscuit. Then I was able to get a paid gig with Sidewalk because I could be their on-site operations analyst.
So
And
wait, before this, you hadn't been paid for any of that work?
nah, yeah, I was just kind of like just doing stuff to do it, just because again, didn't have very many friends, was bored. And then, sometimes things just dawn on you and you're like, oh man, I should probably get paid to do this. Got the
Sounds like
ticket.
you did a lot of work that you should have been paid for.
Yeah, and it's I know you've probably dealt with this before, Dora. And I think some of my students deal with this as well. The whole idea of doing volunteer work to build up your credentials or doing unpaid internships. I'm actually against it unless you have a plan. If I would have talked to the past me, I would have told the past me not to do so much of it, or at least not get deeply involved. Like it's one thing if you're just taking out the trash, but if you're like a key person in operations and you're just not getting paid, that can be problematic. It's hard to kind of complain because at this point, that was all part of my journey, which got me to where I am. So I guess it's neither here nor there with that. So
Yeah.
while I don't recommend people do what I did, especially in a modern context, just watch out. So sometimes volunteer work is useful, but sometimes it isn't. Like my initial example of taking out the trash. If you're a student right now and you're wanting to go into film festivals and the only job you're doing as an intern is taking out the trash, that's probably not very useful to you. Always kind of just think about like, if something is useful, then it's useful. If it's not, it's not. I got that first paid festival gig. And then for a couple of years, every festival I applied to, I got paid gigs. Because
It's like the universe opened that door for you.
yeah, it just kind of was like, oh man, okay, yeah, you've been paid. You must be good at what you do. Which I think I was a big ticketing guy. If you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of ticketing positions. That's kind of what I gravitated towards. Just because there was a lot of structure to it. That opened up the door to Cucaloris Film Festival in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's my favorite fest. Finally getting paid at Oxford Film Festival as well. Tribeca Film Festival up in New York. That's my street cred festival. And then we have a lot of smaller music fests, also Hangout Fest, which if you guys are interested in ever coming to Alabama, Hangout Fest is on the beach. Like literally, they set up stages right on the beach. You can look to your side and you'll see the waves crashing, and it's just like a really great music festival. So it's expensive, but it's a lot of fun. Let me drop something on Alabama for y'all. Outside of Hawaii, Alabama is the most ecologically diverse state in America.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah, like it's not what you would traditionally call a rainforest, but we do have a rainforest here. Slightly similar to what they have in like the Pacific Northwest, where people just look at a pine forest, but no, it's actually a rainforest. Uh, but we have a few species that only exist in Alabama, and then we have particular interest. There's a glowworm species in the North Alabama cave systems that only exist in North Alabama and in a small cave system in Australia. So if you guys are like nature enthusiasts or nature tourist people, I would say check it out. It's pretty cool.
I'm sold. I'm say no more. You're gonna have to create a little Alabama itinerary for me now.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, feel free. Reach out if you're ever down here.
Okay. I want to go back to the Cucaloris Film Festival. First of all, Cucaloris is that somebody's name? Why is it called Cucaloris, or is that a location?
So Cucaloris is actually a color filter for lights and film. That was one of the first things I asked when I was interviewing for that gig down there.
Okay, so for the Cucaloris Film Festival, you updated their ticketing infrastructure. You just talked a lot about how you had a lot of experience in ticketing. I think that this is relevant to anyone who has a ticketed event, not just in the film industry. So tell us what you did there and how you've seen ticketing systems evolve since that time.
I'm going to be pretty old school here. So back then we used Vendini. I know Vendini isn't super popular anymore, but a lot of folks from the arts community, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that was what you got. That was like a before Tessitura really took over in arts organizations, it was always Vendini. And so like setting up that infrastructure, it's really the way we do it in film festivals is similar to a lot of other organizations. We're segmenting our consumer groups. So basically, to use like a film that's out right now. If anyone's ever heard, I mean, if you're watching this in January, but right now the movie The Heretic with Hugh Grant just came out, and so if Heretic was programmed in Cucalores Film Festival back then, and it's probably very similar to what they do now, it would be programmed as Heretic, horror film, uh, famous actor, maybe Oscar worthy psychological thriller. And so I've coded the film like that, right? And so now for all my future programming after the festival, now I know like to for me to actually bring value to you as the customer, if I have a horror film, you bought horror film tickets at the festival, so you might be more interested in watching a horror film right now versus a lot of us have been involved with multiple types of events, and then we end up on these mass email lists that just send us emails for everything. Like if you go to a big festival, like not a big festival, but let's call it a big conference, if you're an industry person and you are constantly getting emails about like higher ed stuff, that doesn't bring you any value. It's junk mail to you. And so by segmenting like our consumers through the ticketing structure, it allows us just to bring more value to people and hopefully get more click-throughs where they actually buy what you're emailing them.
Yeah.
Um, as well as the unique thing about a film festival is that it's so much programming at once. So Cucalores goes on for 5 or 6 days. And so you have films from at the time 9 a.m. until 10-ish. Plus you have after hours programming like parties. You've got other like in-person events. They've got this really weird thing I'll tell you about called Bust a Lumberton. So basically, we can gather all this data on all these different customers at once during that film festival time. And then we can know most of our folks wanted horror films, but not very many of them wanted dramas. So when we do our regular programming, it's going to be horror film centric with some dramas, but not as much because from like our data, our customers aren't going that way. And so
Mm.
it's just a way for us to like develop like consumer profiles, even to the point like, say, Dora, you had a friend who made a film, and you drive down to North Carolina, you see that one movie, and then you leave. And so now we look at your consumer profile. Oh, you only saw one film during the fest. So maybe advertising to you hardcore won't be as actually beneficial because you're not like truly one of our customers that's going to be like rebuying over and over again.
That makes
And
sense.
so a lot of traditional arts organizations have a similar setup. So your operas, your symphonies, but you're just kind of seeing that with the age of social media. I guess we will be in that age forever. And like just things changing. It's getting harder and harder to compete. So you actually have to like get as much value of each of your customers or patrons as you can.
That makes sense. And so how have you seen ticketing structures evolve since then? Like it basically works the same way now, I assume. Like what
A
or have there been updates that help target better or something?
I find that ticketing systems are easier out the box right now. I feel like maybe in my era and before, especially, God forbid about the people who were just in the Ticketmaster only era, it you actually had to know what you were doing. I feel like for most ticketing systems now, if you have everything that you want in the system in an Excel sheet, if especially if you're like a paying customer and by like you have like a license with them versus just using Eventbrite once or twice, you can usually just call them up and say, "Hey, I've got this Excel sheet. Can you make it so I can upload it?" That would save a lot of like man hours from what we had before. So the simplification also mobile ticketing is getting a lot better. It used to be kind of finicky. Or if you were in an old building, you couldn't scan a ticket or your ticket couldn't be brought up. Like I still love like the tactile feel of an old school ticket. Shout out to Boca printers. The way things are going now, it's just everything is moving digital. We can see that in every part of our lives. Just that ease of use out the box. Depending on your use case scenario, depending what organization you're at, what facility you're at, you might not actually need a bona fide ticketing person. Ticketing gods, please forgive me for saying that. But a lot of people have the ability now to walk into a job and like, hey, set the ticketing, and someone can just do it. I love ticketing. I love like the nuance of it and like figuring out what people like and what they don't like. But with the way the systems are being built now, you can pretty much just Google tickets and pick the first one that comes up in a Google search, and you'll be fine. Thoughts and prayers to my folks out there in those legacy arenas using like the DOS version of Ticketmaster, because there's still a lot of those folks out there. There is some use for that. So with like old school Ticketmaster, you don't need the internet. It doesn't matter. That is always something to think about, especially if you're in like a structure that's been there for 70 years. That may be beneficial. If you're using old school Ticketmaster, you will need someone who knows what they're doing, though.
Yeah. How about in a place that a festival that's in the middle of nowhere, like Coachella or something?
I think Coachella is like one of those unique cases where it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's such a popular festival. I would bet there's people like breaking down the door and saying, "Hey, use our system. We'll give you free MiFi's. We'll bring a like a van with like internet." Now, if we're planning the Withrow and Music Fest in the middle of nowhere, then it might be a problem. Middle of nowhere, no Wi-Fi signal. At that point, I would say we would actually have to come together with our sponsors or with our own dollars and just like rent out the MiFi boxes. I've had in like very rare scenarios had to like take out a roll of tickets. It's you guys know what I'm talking about. It says ticket on it and
Yeah.
do that when nothing worked. But that's a terrible situation to be in.
It is. And it's also a good reminder that you always need a plan B and a plan C because you just never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because I personally have never worked at a film festival. I did an event at the Toronto Film Festival in early September. So kind of watching people in action and talking to the event planners there, I was like, wow, this is like a whole different beast. So I would love to know like what unique challenges you encounter at film festivals and also music festivals and like how do they differ from each other? Because I've done like a lot of community festivals like in my town. I volunteer for the community festivals here, but obviously that's nothing like a big film or music festival. So I'd love to hear about things you've encountered there.
One big thing that I would say the difference is your basic film festival customer is going to be a lot more laid back than your basic music festival customer. So think about it like this. A film festival customer could be like you visiting your friend seeing one movie. But if you're a music festival customer, you're generally all in. Whether you're a day pass, a weekend pass, a VIP pass, a super VIP pass, you're there and you're hanging out, and an event. It's something we call in the research commodity spectacle. You're there for the commodity spectacle. And so when you're there, you're probably drinking more than you would at a film festival. Someone else, I'm not going to put Dora here on the spot, but somebody else might be getting intoxicated through other means, which is can be an issue. I've had to deal with that as well too. And it's all happening generally with a music festival in one place. South by Southwest, Austin City Limits and festivals, music festivals like that do happen in multiple venues, but typically a music festival is in one location. Now, with that, like when you're in a film festival, you have to manage like the multiple venues going on and like the multiple technology that is available at the different venues. In a city like New York, this might not be a big issue, but in Oxford, Mississippi, and Wilmington, North Carolina, and even Birmingham, Alabama, it does become an issue because you don't know what you're really walking into. A venue may be booked, but the venue is really just a bar with a screen. You're screening a film, and as like since I'm usually a ticketing person in a big film festival, You're the filmmaker, you're screening your film in a random bar. It's hard floors, like vaulted ceilings, and the entire time your film is screening, there's an echo. And so I'm the face that you're dealing with. And so you're upset. You're not upset with me, but you're upset generally because the screening venue is not perfect. And so that's really, I feel like, is the big difference. Just having different things going on, the timing, being a ticketing person, closing down tills. Like I know a lot of folks don't have cash tills at different venues and film festivals anymore. But back when I was still in it, it was going somewhere that might be a little sketchy and walking out with like a $2,000 in a box and people knowing you have $2,000 on you and having to get out of there. That multiple venues, multiple like all around town, different like timing of getting back and forth. Now, I don't work Atlanta Film Festival, but I do have a colleague up there. They'll have venues that driving wise, because of Atlanta traffic, are 45 minutes away. And the subway system in Atlanta isn't great. If something goes wrong and you might just not be able to get there in Atlanta. So whereas I'm in smaller communities, so usually I can drive there within a reasonable amount of time. Also, it's kind of interesting just to see at a film festival set up the way the filmmakers and the industry folks react to the community. Now, Wilmington is a special case because it's a college town and it's very liberal. But when you talk about Birmingham, Alabama, or Oxford, Mississippi, even though Oxford is a college town as well, it's that very, very Southern local culture blending with outsiders coming in. Now, it usually goes great, but sometimes there's issues. And again, if you're a ticketing person or you're a venue person, you're the one dealing with these issues. So that can come up as well. But I think they're both beautiful experiences. I think we're lucky. We're event people, and folks who are listening to this are event people. We get to do something really special. We get to create happiness. I feel honored and blessed to be able to do it, even with the bad things.
We do. I love that. That's such a beautiful sentiment. I guess that now that you've worked in enough of these big festivals or even like these mid-sized festivals, you know enough to be able to put together a risk plan. Like I don't think that I would have thought about like what happens when all of these like LA film folks descend upon Oxford, Mississippi. But I assume that this is something that you would talk to your staff about and say like these are the types of interactions or engagements that we've seen before. Here's how to deal with them. Here's who to call, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's weird in the sense that sometimes when you're in a position, whether you're a event planner or an event manager, you understand that these things go wrong, but other staff members in the organization, they don't understand it. When I'm designing training materials and I say, hey, years ago, and it was a horrible incident, but remember the shooting in Aurora at the movie theater? That
Mhm.
happened not too long before one of the festivals I worked years ago. And I mentioned that. I'm like, look, this is the risk plan. These are where the security officers at the venues are. And people's eyes get big and get worried. And it's like, no, no. It's hard to sometimes explain to an executive director or a marketing person, like if we're training other staff and volunteers, if we don't give them these plans and let them know like what's happening, it can be very detrimental, like from a legal standpoint for us, because then we're not doing our due diligence. And so, just thinking about those things, generally, when I work festivals, weather isn't a problem, but weather can be a problem depending on where you are geographically.
That makes sense. All right, so we're roughly at the halfway point, and I want to make sure I get to all of my questions for you. So I'm gonna move ahead to first congratulate you on finishing your hospitality master's degree recently. What drew you to pursue hospitality as an educator rather than going back out into the planning world?
It sounds so smug when I say this. People are like, oh, how'd you become a faculty member at a college? And I'll be like, oh, I applied. Uh, no, like,
That's like Legally Blonde. What? Like
yeah,
it's hard?
yeah, like yeah, just there's an application system. You just submitted it, and then you're hired. I had been at Samford University, which is a local university here, as an event manager, and in my final 2 years, I was the event manager and student affairs manager for the School of Pharmacy. I didn't see a pathway to a future that I wanted there. And so I started applying for jobs. And I was, looking at a few industry jobs, mostly nonprofit, but some for-profit companies. And they seemed okay, but you know how like sometimes you get a job offer and it just isn't right, and you're like, oh, give me a couple more days, give me a couple more days, and it's like, you know what, you just need to tell this person you don't want the job. That happened a few times, and then this position, I saw it open, and I said, oh, I'm gonna apply for it, and then I saw the listing taken down, and I was like, oh crap, I missed it. But then it got reposted. So whoever they were going to hire, it didn't, they were thinking about it. I guess they just said, give me a few more days. So I applied. It was a long process, just because of having a law degree. In the HR department right now, there is a 30-page document from my hire saying that I'm qualified to teach hospitality. And so
Interesting.
that leads me to the hospitality master's degree. The reason why I got that was very practical. So I wouldn't have any issues ever again getting a teaching job, because while University of Montevallo saw potential in me, another university might say, well, he doesn't have the right degree. They wouldn't even look at my resume. And so I wanted to make sure that never happened. Plus, University of Alabama, where I got the degree from, great school. I'm still in touch with my advisor. I'm going to do a class observation with her next semester. And for those of you guys who are studying for your CMP, I forget which chapter she's on, but she is a writer of one of the chapters. Dr. Kimberly Seifert,
Very cool.
but I'm still not done. So I'm still a student always.
I love that you're a student always. I think that's really important. So I'm going to back up for a minute because, like you said, you don't just have a hospitality degree. You also have a master of studies in law, healthcare policy, and legal project management, which before I met you, I had never like seen those things together as one degree. So I'd love to know what led you to this. Further that, like, what advice do you have for event professionals who are interested in teaching and lecturing? Because I assume that most folks listening to this episode probably like have never even thought about that as an option, or maybe think about it as like a retirement option or something like, oh, when I'm done with events, maybe I can like teach somebody how to do events or something.
The reason I got the degree was because, again, I was on mentally, I was quiet quitting. I was on my way out. But so I was like, well, let me get a free master's before I leave. And so that's one thing I want everyone to know. If you guys are event professionals and you get an event job at a university, especially if it's a 4-year university that has a grad program, you usually can get at least a free master's, but some of the bigger schools will give you a free doctoral degree. So that's one way you can get your degrees without having any debt or very much debt. At Samford, there was two programs that you could finish in a year if you doubled up your classes. It was the Master's of Studies in Law and the Master's of Science in Environmental Management. And so I did the Master's of Studies in Law because I saw that they had a finance option, and I thought that would be fun. But lo and behold, the program coordinator said, "Well, we don't have very many people who are interested in that. So to actually get that version of the degree, it will take 3 years." And I said, "Okay, what can I finish in a year?" And he said, "Well, if you mix together two different concentrations, you can do it in a year." And so that's what I did. I love having that law degree. Feels real good in the self-assessment. But if I'm being honest with the folks out there, because it caused me trouble down the road getting the teaching job, I wish I would have gotten an MBA. So if I would have gotten the MBA, there would have been no question about me being able to teach hospitality since it is business adjacent. And I just would have I would have gotten hired much sooner. When I got hired, it was 2 weeks before the semester started. And the semester at Samford started in 2 weeks as well. So I had to put in my notice, work all the way up because I was the event manager and student affairs manager for School of Pharmacy, so I was over new student orientation. So I was still doing that, and then leaving halfway through the day and going to new employee orientation at Montevallo. And I ended up moving all my stuff out on a Saturday, so I worked that Saturday technically, and then I had Sunday off, and then I started teaching Monday.
What a whirlwind. Holy
Yeah,
moly.
yeah,
I'm glad it worked
yeah.
out for you though.
Yeah, I know, right? It could have gone horribly wrong, but it worked out. And it's beautiful to be able to like work with young people and like be able to give them honest answers and then just prepare them for like, things that can happen along the way. So I do feel blessed to be able to do that. But if I had an MBA, I probably could have been hired halfway through the summer and I could have been preparing for my classes that entire time versus putting together four what is it syllabi in a not even a day in like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a rush.
Yeah.
What classes are you teaching this semester?
So this semester I've got event planning, travel and tourism, hospitality industry, and lodging operations. Now,
Mm.
and this is just an aside. So that lodging operation class is probably going to change into a generalized supervision and hospitality. And then there's a few other programming changes that I'm going to make down the road. Um, for those of you guys who are listening, this program may not be good for a working professional because it's other than one class, it's all in person. But if you have students, or not students, children or nephews or whatnot, who are interested in a hospitality program at a small school, which is hospitality through the lens of event planning and management, um, go to montevallo.edu, use the code UMFCS, that's U like up, M like mom, F like Frank, C like Charles, S like Sam. That'll waive the fee for your application.
This is very, very generous of you. I was not expecting this plug, but this is the best kind of plug you can give on the podcast. Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, no worries, no worries. I want to grow the program, so I want to talk to my event people first because that's like my main like angle I come from. So,
Yeah,
but
great.
other than that, like I know the last part of your question would be people who are interested or even considering teaching. Look at what's available to you. When I've looked through higheredjobs.com, and there is Chronicles of Higher Education. They've got a job board as well. You can find plenty more, but those are the two big ones. There are some community colleges that you only need a 2-year degree to be an instructor, especially when you look at the hospitality part of the world. So sometimes they want 2-year degrees, sometimes they want a 4-year degree, sometimes they want a grad degree. So just kind of see where you're at and then see how you can, fit into these positions. I'll be honest, a lot of us who are coming from industry are going to have to start out as adjuncts. Now, you can get trapped as an adjunct forever. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I have colleagues right now who are adjuncting at 3 different places, but sometimes it works out. So you just kind of have to call it how you see it. If anyone is interested in like, if you guys are like me and you're non-traditional students and you want some help making a plan, or hit me on LinkedIn. I'm going to give Dora a website that doesn't exist right now, but in the future, when you're listening to this, the website will exist and it'll be in the show notes. So click there and then we can talk. Not a whole lot because I don't have all the time in the world, but I don't, mind like giving some people a tip. Like I'll drop another tip for you guys. If you don't have any college credit and you don't have any money and you want to start getting college credit, there's a website called modernstates.org. Modernstates.org has CLEP like practice exams and study guides. When you finish their practice exam and their study training class, they give you a voucher to take a CLEP test. CLEP tests are offered through College Board. Most of you guys are familiar with AP exams. CLEP exams are like AP exams, but they're easier. And now through Modern States, at least until the grant money runs out, they're free. So if you do it and you pass, great. If you don't pass, who cares? Just wait 3 months to take it again. Yeah,
This is
yeah. So,
excellent advice. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so just keep plugging away. I think we as event professionals have so much to offer. We're business management, we're accounting, we're tech, we're catering. So we're the culinary piece. We're project management. Some of us are risk managers. So there's all these different aspects that we bring to the table in student training. So it is a little harder to get teaching jobs in business programs because there are a lot of business PhDs out there. Currently, I'm in an FCS program, that's Family and Consumer Science. If you guys don't know what that is, it used to be called home ec. So I'm a home ec teacher. I like to say like, I can't do your accounting for you, but if you need some sewing done, I can do a mean cross stitch. Uh, but so just look around. There's hospitality only programs across the board. So, get involved in that side of things if you're interested. I can see Dora's eyes darting, so we're probably getting close on time. So I don't want to keep her too long, but I can talk about this forever. And so maybe a better opportunity for me to talk about this forever is if you guys reach out to me. and then we can talk about it forever.
I would love to talk. I wish I could do a really long podcast or like a class or something with you because this is really fascinating. And also you're a very engaging speaker. So I'm interested in your master's thesis that you mentioned to me, which is the film festival patron life cycle. And I think we probably could do a whole episode just on this. But can you tell us some of the most interesting things that you learned while you were doing this research, and what can other festival managers take away from your research?
I don't think I'm that unique, but my unique experience at film festivals, I'm at the mid-sized, smaller niche film festivals. And if you look at moviemaker.com, you will see that Oxford Film Fest, Cuckoo Film Fest, and Sidewalk Film Fest usually make it every year. So just, if you guys want some, name recognition. But when we think about these size film festivals, because they're located in smaller communities, because no matter whether it's pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, money is always an issue. Really, what you're depending on is for your patrons, your customers to like fill multiple roles. So think about it like this. I use myself as an example. I bought tickets, I was a volunteer, I became a contract staff member, I became a full-time staff member, and now I'm a board member. And so that is kind of the arc you want for a decent number of your patrons, just because what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to get the most value out of people while providing them with value. Like, don't get me wrong, I've spent a lot of money at Sidewalk. I sponsor films at the festival every year, but I feel like I've gotten a lot out of Sidewalk as well. It kind of set me off on this path that led me to where I am today. I'm here in, balmy, sunny Birmingham, Alabama, Hoover, Alabama, rather, living out my life. So I just think it's like a great organization. But when you develop that, what is the good word, symbiosis with a patron, you can see how far they can go and like how much value that not only you create, but how much value you can get. So some some patrons will buy a few tickets and be a volunteer. That's great. Some patrons will do that and sponsor. Some people will go special events. And so it's just identifying early on which patrons are going to do what. So it's still, I feel like it's still a work in progress. It's going to turn into my dissertation for my current degree. So it's still moving forward. But I always say it's okay. If someone wants to read it, we'll talk. Hopefully in the future, you guys will spend $80 for an issue of event management, like the academic journal, and you'll see it in there, and you're like, oh yeah, that's that guy.
I know that guy. Yeah. What's something that you're working on right now that you're really excited or proud about?
I just got my first institutional grant. So it's a P2P grant. That's like a new thing that SAC-COC, that's the higher ed accreditor for our area, is doing. And so P2P is progression to profession. And so with my grant, I'm able to take a few students to the National Coalition of Black Meeting Planners Conference, which it's in Birmingham this year. It's this week. So I'm really excited to take them there. So to give them that taste of like a big convention on the national scale in the meeting industry, I think it's really going to open up their world for them. I have one student in particular who already has an event business, and I'm willing to bet she's going to make some good contacts. And I've got another grant I'm working well on with some colleagues. It might not work out this time around. It's a workforce grant. So hopefully I can create some event planning, event management training courses for free. So if you guys are listening to this and it happens, there might be a link, maybe, right? Hopefully.
I
Maybe it
can
might take a little while.
I will promise all of our listeners that if it happens, Withrow will let me know and I will post it up so that everybody else will know too. This is something about that's quite unique to academia and nonprofit, like, grant writing. That's a whole other skill set that I don't possess. What you said earlier about some people are sort of just adjuncts for life, or for an extended period of time. I don't think that people realize just how cutthroat academia really is. It is not an easy place to work, or it's even less easy place to get into to work, just getting a job in academia. And with the hiring cycles, from what I understand, even if you are an adjunct professor, you need to apply like a whole year before the school year starts. You can't just
Yeah.
be like, in like March or April, say, I might want to teach next semester. Like you had to apply 6 months ago to teach 2 semesters from now, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it really depends too because I know with with certain programs they really need people, and so if you're, if you apply and you hit all the boxes, and this is very important, y'all, and you're likable in an interview, you have to be likable, y'all. I know likable is a very vacuous term and it can mean almost anything, but it is a lot of it is likability and how you're perceived. Because whether you go to Harvard and get a PhD or you get an MBA at Western Governors University online, when you actually go to start teaching, it's like, okay, here's your class, do it. Like it surprised me so much that there was no like, you get a regular job and like there's extensive training, you shadow people, you do this. This is just like, okay, here's how all the HR functions work. Here's your login for Canvas or Blackboard. Now create your class. And it's like, oh,
Okay, great.
okay.
Yeah, you really are the master of your own destiny in that classroom. Okay, I'm gonna come at you with our usual final closing question. What's the coolest event that you've been to, either as an attendee or as a producer?
At Cucalores Film Festival, the second year I was involved. The first year was great, but the second year they kind of mirrored what South by does, and they had a comedy track, a tech track, a dance track, a film track, all music track, all that, right? But they have this event every year. It's called Bust a Lumberton, and to give you some context, um, if anyone has heard of the film Blue Velvet, most of the movie was produced at the studio that Dino De Laurentiis started in the Wilmington area. So not not Dawson's Creek. One of those WGN shows is really big, was filmed in Wilmington. Blue Velvet, one of the exterior shots of the apartment complex in Blue Velvet is this apartment complex down the street from where the festival's main offices are. And so it's got this connection to Lumberton, which is a real city, but it's a fictional city in the film. And so Busta Lumberton is just some weird performance art thing. So the second year, if you wanted to do Buster Lumberton, you sign up for it and put your number down. So a phone texted you, right, and said, go to this place and wait. And so you would go to the place and wait, and then a van would show up and put a bag over your head and throw you in the back of a van and drive you around and put you into this like small room. Now, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to say something pretty provocative. When they took the bag over your head, they duct taped you to somebody else, and then they had like an old, like, remember the old TVs where it was like they had one of those TVs with a VHS player like hooked up to it playing hardcore gay pornography, and that was Busta Lumberton that year. It ebbs and flows how weird Busta Lumberton gets, but that
Wow.
year I thought was pretty interesting, and I was like, you know what? Maybe the people at Cucaloris are my people.
Interesting is that's a tame way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, it does sound crazy enough that I would also like to experience it. So, and on the side, I Googled teen shows filmed in Wilmington, and Dawson's Creek was filmed there. Also, One Tree Hill. So
One
I
Tree
guess it's
Hill is the one I'm thinking of because
okay.
there's still tourists who come for One Tree Hill.
Oh, interesting. So I live in a town where The Sopranos was filmed.
Hmm.
And, The Sopranos came out at this point 25 years ago. But a lot of the places where it was filmed don't exist anymore. Like Satriali's, the pork shop doesn't exist anymore, whatever. But the car repair shop is literally, I can open my window and look at it. It's literally across the street from me. And it's now like a discount tire place, which is a bummer. When I rewatched The Sopranos as an adult, I was like, oh my God, that's right across the street. I forgot that it was filmed there. But anyway, we still get a lot of tourists here, and I still see groups of people. And I'm like, "Are you guys here for a Sopranos tour?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know." They got their cameras out, and I'm like, "Is there anything to see?" But so it's funny how so many years after something ends, there's still that legacy, and people still want to be a part of where that film happened, or
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
case, TV show. Yeah.
If you get a chance to visit Wilmington, whether it's during the festival time or not, I would recommend going. It's a cool, beautiful town. It's close to the beach. The Cape Fear River is goes right through downtown. I used to be into history as a young man, and so like I'm really into river systems that were main ports of travel. And so it's just kind of interesting to be there and like kind of like visualize for how many thousands of years that people, whether indigenous people, whether colonists, what have you, use this river system to transport goods and wares. So it's like you get to kind of feel and be part of the history there. So
Yeah. Well, Withrow, thank you so much for giving us your time. I know that you have a website coming up, and we will post it as soon as it's ready. But for those who want to learn more about you and your work before the website's ready, where should they go?
definitely go to LinkedIn. I tell my students this: if you don't get an answer from me, email me again because maybe I just didn't see it or what happened. Things happen. So
Yeah.
I don't want to like miss you because I know I did a couple of short YouTube videos about studying for the CMP, and every now and then people hit me up.
That's great. I like that people come back to you for that. Thanks to our dear listeners and Meeting Protocol fans for checking out this episode. Don't forget to go to meetingprotocol.org where you can sign up for our newsletter that includes links to new podcasts, a CMP tip of the month, and tons of resources for all things related to meeting professionals in CMP. Thanks, everybody.